That's all covered in today's China Truths.
For many years, the world admired China's ability to build fast. Entire cities rose in a short time. High-speed rail networks expanded at a scale no other country could match. On the surface, it looked like a miracle of modern development. But inside China, ordinary people had another name for these achievements. They called them tofu-dreg projects. In China, tofu-dreg construction refers to buildings and infrastructure that look solid but fall apart with minimal force. Walls that crack under pressure, concrete that can be scraped away by hand, bridges that collapse shortly after completion. These failures were never rare. They were repeated, documented, and quietly buried. For a long time, outsiders believed this was China's internal problem, a domestic issue hidden by censorship and propaganda. Something unfortunate, but contained within the mainland. That assumption is no longer valid. Tofu-dreg construction has crossed borders, and it has now begun to kill people outside China. In January 2026, Thailand experienced a disaster that shattered any remaining illusions. A massive crane collapsed from a construction site linked to the Thailand-China high-speed railway project. At the exact moment it fell, a passenger train was passing beneath it. There was no warning, no chance to escape, and no time to understand what was happening. The crane crashed directly onto the moving train. Several carriages were crushed. The train derailed and caught fire. Panic spread instantly as survivors screamed for help inside twisted metal. Rescue teams arrived to scenes of devastation that few had ever witnessed on Thai railways. By the time a rescue operation stabilized, the scale of the tragedy was clear. At least 32 people were confirmed dead. More than 66 passengers were injured, many with severe trauma. Some victims were ordinary workers commuting home. Others were parents, elderly passengers, and young travelers with no connection to the construction project at all. These people did not take risks. They bought tickets, boarded a passenger train, and trusted that the system protecting them was safe. That trust was fatally betrayed. The train involved was carrying approximately 171 passengers at the time of the accident. It was operating on a normal schedule, not during off hours or maintenance periods. This makes the incident even more alarming. Heavy construction machinery was allowed to operate dangerously close to an active bone. This was not a natural disaster. There was no storm, earthquake, or external attack. This was a man-made failure caused by decisions, shortcuts, and a system that allowed unacceptable risk to exist. The crane was part of the Bangkok-Nong Khai high-speed railway project, a flagship infrastructure initiative designed to connect Thailand with Laos and ultimately China. The project has been promoted as a symbol of regional cooperation, modernization, and economic progress. On paper, it promised faster travel and stronger economic ties. In official narratives, it represented development and opportunity. But on the ground, the project revealed familiar warning signs seen repeatedly in China's domestic infrastructure failures. Tight deadlines were prioritized over safety margins. Construction continued alongside active rail operations. Safety protocols existed on paper, but enforcement appeared weak. Layers of responsibility overlapped until accountability became unclear. After the disaster, State Railway of Thailand ordered an immediate suspension of construction on the affected section of the project. This was not a symbolic gesture. Halting a major international infrastructure project carries political, economic, and diplomatic consequences. Yet the scale of the tragedy made continuation impossible. Investigations were launched, contractors were questioned, safety plans were re-examined. Thailand's authorities faced intense public pressure to uncover how such a failure could happen. But the deeper issue extends beyond one crane, one train, or one project. Inside China, similar construction failures have occurred for years. Residential buildings have collapsed shortly after completion. Schools built to modern standards have crumbled during earthquakes. Highways have sunk. Rail tunnels have leaked and cracked. Each time, investigations were promised. Each time, accountability faded. The reason these failures rarely attract global attention is not because they are rare, but because information inside China is tightly controlled. Videos disappear, discussions are censored, victims are discouraged from speaking out. Over time, collapse becomes normalized. When the same construction practices are exported abroad, that control no longer exists. Accidents cannot be hidden, casualties cannot be erased, and the consequences become international. Tofu-dreg construction is not just about poor materials. It is about a culture where speed and cost matter more than human life. It is about inspections that prioritize paperwork over physical reality. It is about systems that reward completion dates, not long-term safety. Concrete does not respond to propaganda. Steel does not care about political slogans. Gravity cannot be negotiated. When engineering principles are compromised, collapse becomes inevitable. Some attempt to frame criticism of these projects as political hostility. That argument fails under scrutiny. This is not about ideology or geopolitics. It is about physics, engineering, and accountability. The victims in Thailand were not political actors. They were civilians. In fact, Chinese citizens themselves have been warning about tofu-dreg construction for years. They were the first victims. Foreign countries are simply encountering the same risks later, under different flags and contracts. Thailand's tragedy should serve as a wake-up call to every country accepting large-scale foreign infrastructure projects. The question is not who builds the fastest or cheapest. The question is who guarantees safety, transparency, and accountability. Independent inspections matter. Clear responsibility matters. Enforcement of safety zones matters. When these safeguards are weakened or ignored, lives are placed at risk without their consent. The cost of cheap infrastructure is often hidden until something goes wrong. When it does, the price is measured in funerals, hospital beds, and lifelong trauma. For the families of the 32 victims, no investigation can undo the loss. For the injured, recovery may take years. For Thailand, trust in infrastructure safety has been deeply shaken. For the rest of the world, this disaster carries a broader message. Tofu-dreg construction is no longer a domestic Chinese issue. It has become a global risk exported through contracts, loans, and political agreements. Infrastructure should exist to protect and serve the public. When it becomes a threat, something has gone fundamentally wrong. The collapse in Thailand was not the end of the story. It was a warning. If lessons are ignored, similar tragedies will happen again. In different countries, under different projects, but driven by the same flawed system. The real question now is not whether development should continue, but whether the world is willing to demand safety before speed, accountability before appearances, and human life before political prestige. Because the next crane collapse, the next bridge failure, or the next rail disaster may not happen in Thailand. What makes this tragedy even more disturbing is how preventable it was. Around the world, strict construction rules exist precisely to prevent heavy machinery from operating near active passenger lines. These rules were written in blood after decades of deadly accidents. Ignoring them is not ignorance. It is a conscious gamble with human lives. In Thailand's case, that gamble failed catastrophically. A single decision, allowing construction to continue without fully isolating the rail line, set off a chain reaction that could not be stopped. Once the crane fell, nothing else mattered. No paperwork, no contracts, no political explanations could reverse the damage. This is why infrastructure safety is not a technical detail. It is a moral responsibility. When governments approve projects, they are not approving blueprints alone. They are approving risk. And when oversight is weak, that risk is transferred directly to ordinary people who never agreed to bear it. Supporters of rapid infrastructure expansion often argue that accidents are unavoidable. That argument collapses under scrutiny. Accidents are not random when patterns repeat. When the same failures occur across different projects, regions, and countries, they reveal a structural problem, not bad luck. The pattern seen in Thailand mirrors what Chinese citizens have experienced for years. First comes the promise of progress. Then comes rushed construction. Warnings are ignored. Whistleblowers are dismissed. And only after lives are lost does accountability briefly appear, before fading again. What changes now is visibility. A tragedy in Thailand cannot be erased by deleting videos or silencing victims. International media reports it, foreign governments take notice, investors ask questions, and suddenly what was once dismissed as China's internal issue becomes impossible to ignore. This is why the Thailand disaster matters far beyond its borders. It challenges the global assumption that speed equals competence. It exposes the danger of trusting glossy presentations over independent verification. And it forces a reckoning with how modern infrastructure is actually built. No country should accept infrastructure projects without demanding full transparency. Safety audits must be independent, not performed by the same entities that profit from construction. Liability must be clearly defined, and when standards are violated, consequences must be real and immediate. Without these safeguards, infrastructure becomes a ticking clock. It may function today. It may even impress visitors. But failure is only postponed, not prevented, and when it arrives violently. The victims of the Thailand rail disaster did nothing wrong. They were not reckless. They were not careless. They simply trusted a system that failed them. That is what makes this tragedy so deeply unjust. As the world continues to invest trillions into infrastructure, the lesson from Thailand must not be forgotten. Development that ignores safety is not progress. It is negligence disguised as ambition. If tofu-dreg construction continues to spread unchecked, the question is no longer if another disaster will happen, but where. And when it does, the same excuses will surface, unless the system itself is finally challenged. The collapse in Thailand should mark a turning point, not because it was the worst disaster imaginable, but because it was clear, visible, and undeniable. A warning written in steel, fire, and human loss. The world can choose to listen or wait for the next collapse.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We will keep reporting on the COVID surge in China, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get the latest videos. And thank you for tuning in.